Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today I have an amazing guest, Dave Whittaker. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Man, thank you, Rob. I'm excited to be here, and it's been fun cutting up leading up to this. So I'm excited to get it on your podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Dave is the president of Equiscape Business Advisors and has been in the green industry for a couple of years. I want to say the better part of 3 decades of industry experience.
That's true, and I think that's probably the most intriguing part of the relationships that I have with my clients. Is I'm not a convert green hat accountant that has leaned into the green industry. I'm a green industry guy that started behind the lawnmower and worked my way up through the ranks and 10 recessions and learning things the hard way and learning what works, what doesn't work, and ultimately into my 50s have decided to share that knowledge with the rest of the industry and having a great time doing it.
It's awesome, man. I mean, it's like one of the best industries in the world. At least it's the best one we've found over the years. We've been doing it for 20. And one of the things I just love about having a guest like you on is the vast experience. Not only were you in it and behind the wheel, but you also have an opportunity to work with like a bunch of different clients in a bunch of different parts of the country and in a bunch of different businesses. And so like that perspective of like breadth, a lot of people when they're entrepreneurs, they have an opportunity to share and learn from others, but like still they're really focused on the one business. So having someone like you come in, I think it's super cool. So why don't you give us a Cole's notes of that lawnmower start to how you ended up doing this thing? You kind of alluded to it quickly there, and then just give us a quick little rundown of like what the core focus is over at Equiscape.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rob, essentially, my story is no different than many other folks in the green industry. I was 16 years old looking for a first job, and luckily enough, I've been truly blessed to bat 1,000 with the green industry companies I've worked for. And Gibbs Landscape, who many people know is a preeminent landscape firm in the country. Jim Gibbs, Gibbs Gardens in North Georgia, is a well-known guy down in the southeast and nationwide with the green industry. I started there at 16, pulling weeds, being taught how to run a walk behind and all that kind of stuff, getting through high school, and then to your point, the abridged version. I transitioned from that. I fall in love with it and fall into the hands of Post Properties, which was a $2 billion real estate investment trust. And it just so happens that my first job was the best landscape company in the Southeast. And all of a sudden, now I'm in the hands of probably the best landscape in-house division anywhere in the country at the time. And they started Post Properties was a multi-family housing developer that had properties all over the country. And they decided that landscape was going to become their key marketing tool. That in order to they wanted to change the way that people saw the apartment business. So they utilized landscape to create that Disney-esque luxury feel, and it worked. So that to the point that they changed their logo of this $2 billion company to a tulip. So I was fortunate enough to get in at about the mid-range. It was well established. They were well on their way. And I was the youngest guy on the leadership team to kind of transition into that next big phase. And I was fortunate enough to work there for the better part of a decade. And then like many stories, they went public, and the board of directors had different ideas about how that would look, the landscape division in particular. And so I pivoted to where I would spend the next 20 years, up until, just last year even, to a high end, landscape firm in Atlanta. And we wound up bartering the deal to take over all of the post properties in the Atlanta market because we weren't national. So as they transitioned away from landscape, I was fortunate enough to spearhead the acquisition of all of those landscape properties in the Atlanta market. And it was quite the adventure. So yes, to Rob, to your point, man, I'm leaving out a lot, but I went from Gibbs Landscape to Post Properties, to a high-end landscape firm in Atlanta for 20 years. And probably the biggest takeaway is during that span of time over the past 2 decades, I spent an incredible amount of time with Frank Ross, who many people consider the industry's leading advisors. He is a more of a construction advisor, is how he
Right.
started, but he immediately gravitated to some of the largest major players in the green industry and does such a fantastic job of it. He works with Jeff Harkness. He is one of the three prongs of the 3 Point Group,
Right.
based in Atlanta. Frank is based out of Chicago. So I spent 20 years training under the industry's arguably best landscape consultant, and have
There
no
you go.
regrets.
Amazing. And so what's the main focus of Equiscape?
Yeah, and I thank you for asking that, because there's a lot of people out there look at consulting firms that they try to be the jack of all trades. They're trying to be everything to everybody, and by seeking people like Frank and other industry peers, we all made a decision together of what my future would look like, and really hone in to provide services based on my strengths. And so, Rob, essentially what I do is hyper focus on the financial side of the company. And of course, we can have just an incredible amount of operational conversations. I have them all the time. At the same time, the core function is to harvest data through a myriad of landscape softwares, you know, hijacking it from their QuickBooks account or whatever accounting service they use, and bring it all together into a format that they can understand. Profit center reporting, macro data, micro data, and essentially, starting on the 15th of the month as they close out, I'm a busy guy. So we extract all their data, put it in a way that they can understand it, to where they can make decisions based
Yeah.
on real time data, flexible forecasting and reforecasting. And so essentially, I'm a fractional CFO. So
Amazing.
I'm a chief financial officer that they can actually afford.
Right. And which is true, right? Because a lot of people don't know necessarily how big they need to be to get someone like you with your expertise, and making it accessible to a larger set of clients in the industry is amazing. So we're going to get into a lot of the financial opportunities, I will say, that people can probably start to look at. But before I do, the one question that we lead this whole thing with is, what's the primary growth constraint you see holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry?
In the grain industry in particular, and quite frankly, the trade industry, any skilled trade, it's going to be people right now. And I know that's a little bit of a strange answer coming from a guy that is leaned on for financial wisdom, but quite frankly, in the world that we live in, we're in a crunch with talented labor, and people willing to enter the landscape market, to make it a career. So we're all just like you. We're all working very hard to reignite that fire, to capture that next generation of budding professionals to onboard with these companies, and understand that this is a fantastic industry. You can make an excellent living doing it, and it's definitely going to be people.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. And so from your experience over the years, working with larger companies, now working with a number of different clients, um, do you see anybody like doing a good job of building a pipeline and bench strength and having people, fill the key roles inside their organizations?
Absolutely. In fact, there are different ways that people approach, this challenge. And I, as advising, several companies, everybody attacks a little bit of a different way. And for the most part, all of them work. It just depends truly, Rob, on what their long game is. Are they trying to scale for resale? Or are they trying to scale for solely profit? And those are really two different things because on one hand, some companies will literally downsize. They will sell off assets that they can't manage because of the labor shortage. So they'll actually take in value to ease cash flow and things of that nature. They'll cut out outlier properties to further streamline and actually get rid of
Yeah, like prune the bush.
that's right. They're less profitable properties. So in essence, Rob, they're taking the challenge that they face, and they're actually saying, "Hey, I can manage this with the amount of people that we're capable of getting on board with the structure that we currently have, and we're going to do it in a fantastic way. We're going to maximize margins with what we can do." The total other opposite end of the spectrum are people that are like, hey, no, that's not an option. Entrepreneurs are they want to grow. Their curiosity is constantly aroused. They need to be challenged. So the downsizing option is more of a temporary thing, more for the person that is hyper focused on just the bottom line at all times. Whereas you've met them, and they're my client. Man, the ones that you have to pull the reins back on, those are the ones you have to watch out for. That's where the great ideas come from. And so those people, they will overextend themselves and add overhead in order to create an environment where they can actually achieve the level of performance they're looking for. And one of the ways they do that is they hire a talent management director full time. And in our industry, it's such a hard commitment to make because overhead is somewhat of a bad word, right? And so at the same time, Rob, in order to achieve the revenue goals that you're trying to achieve and the growth goals that you're trying to achieve, you have to have the human asset driving that ship, right? So the investment of a talent management director for a company that is of enough size and scale to be able to afford it will pay for itself time and time again. You just have to attach that value to the human asset that's driving the dollars and the profits. So to your point, yeah.
No, go for it.
Yeah. To your point, how do they achieve that? It's their full-time job. So what do? They go out and they create internship programs. So they start recruiting at the college level at all of the horticulture programs and those sorts of things. And that's a nationwide thing. They immediately become members of NALP, and they're able to utilize those resources to reach out to schools nationwide, to attract the industry's greatest up and coming talent as they are working through school. They're already vested in the industry, and so creating a relationship early with those students to try to court them essentially to come work for you when they graduate is the name of the game. And as much as I don't want to make a University of Tennessee reference, football coach back in the day made the comment that recruiting's like shaving. If you don't do it all the time, you're going to look ugly. And so in the people business, that is exactly the case. You have to be recruiting all the time. You have to have boots on the ground and advertisements out there and creating interest to generate. You're essentially advertising for the human asset as much as you are for earning new business.
Well, it's really sorry. First of all, I have to write down this quote verbatim. I'm going to make a note. It's at 14 minutes inside this recording because the
Yep.
idea that if you don't recruiting's like shaving. If you don't do it all the time, you're going to look ugly is
And it was Philip
magical.
Philip Fulmer. Again, I hate to quote him.
Yeah, I won't say what his profession is when we quote him. Uh, anyway, that's magic because it's so true, and it's really interesting you say that too because we have a client out in West Coast. And he's built these relationships with even like high schools in their local area, and community colleges, and goes to job fairs, gets involved in communities, throws parties, always looking to meet people, curious, like introducing himself everywhere he can. And over the last 4 years, 5 years, I guess, since 2021, if you include this year, has had a wait list for people looking to get a gig. And this is during a time like in 2021, it was probably the worst in terms of trying to find people to come. Like people would, sign an employment agreement and then not show up to their first day. Like it was kind of bananas. And this person had no issue whatsoever because they were doing a lot of stuff with like handshakes and building relationships. And he would even say that he was spending like 20, 25% of his time looking for people. And then one of the things you just said there, so I'm just trying to articulate, the message you said about this internships and co-ops and partnerships. Definitely, it doesn't have to be at a national scale too. It could be local. But then you said something that's really interesting about, you're always recruiting, like shaving, but it's like you're looking for clients, but this you're looking for team. And the recruitment approach with like I'm always marketing to find team members is very similar to the recruitment approach or the customer acquisition approach to marketing and sales. But a lot of people miss that. And so there's kind of two things I want to touch on that idea. One is if you listen to David and what he said, it's correct. Like if we're recruiting all the time, we will find good people. But when it comes to the finances and you look at budget lines for, say, marketing, budget lines for recruiting, what do you see?
So that is a fantastic question, and I'm very glad you asked because in my world, you're trying to substantiate every ledger code, right? You're trying to quantify what each of those pieces mean. That doesn't involve fuel, and it doesn't involve the people and boots on the ground generating a dollar. So advertising dollars, different companies treat it different ways, and the best way I've ever seen it done is that they will tie a direct percentage and they will commit to that percentage month in and month out, regardless, Rob, of how the last month went, because they believe in the process, they believe in the program, and they understand that starting a process in 2001 or 2021 is going to pay dividends in 2025. Advertising is such a multi-pronged and important piece, which is why you're in it. You are so crucial to the industry, is that if they were to commit to a set percentage, and they can certainly call me, and I'll be glad to have a conversation with them to help support your cause, is you can tie dollars directly, especially if you do a great job of tracking where calls or interest is coming from, so that you can really dial in your marketing strategy. Rob, you should treat your marketing strategy as a dual pronged attack on clients and personnel at the exact same time.
Love it.
So why would you create a situation where you're not utilizing your current campaign to do both? That doesn't make sense. So I'm sure you can speak to the fact that for even if it required a few extra dollars, why not involve people and associates in your advertising campaign as you're attacking the market for clientele? You really should involve people and make darn sure that you mention your people as a part of, and who doesn't enjoy as a client watching an advertisement or listening to an advertisement where you put your staff on a pedestal? I mean, that's where the connection is going to happen ultimately anyway. who's going to be showing up at my front door? I see pretty pictures. I see beautiful landscape, but I see a lot of that. What's different about you, and what's different about your company and companies that are highly successful are those that invest heavily in it on their team, through training and things like that, and
Yeah.
they market that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I couldn't agree more with what you're saying in terms of marketing, recruiting, kind of going out at the same time, in the same way. But one of the things we found, so we did an analysis of 150 landscape businesses across Canada and the USA, and the average marketing spend was 0.7% of revenue. I think it's difficult to say that there is one percentage that fits every business, because I think at different sizes you need different dollars. Like if you're a $10 million business, 2% is 200 grand. That's a good marketing budget, especially if you're not like, multi-state or national. $10 million in a local marketplace with 200 grand, you could dominate for a really long time. If you're a $1 million company and you spend 2%, you spend $20,000, you could probably start to lay some foundational pieces. And if you're a $5 million company and you're spending 2%, it's $100,000. That might actually be a bit too much. So, 2% I think is a decent starting point, but it's not necessarily a catch-all for everybody. But what I do see though is that it's vastly under budgeted. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because we haven't had the opportunity to see people's recruiting budgets. And one of the things that we found really fascinating, and we would hear this a while back, and it's kind of shifted a little bit of late in terms of before it was like, we can't get people to do the jobs that are coming through our door. We're hearing a little bit more now. It's like, I still need more leads. Like I'm booked out till November, but I'm not booked out till April. So leads is definitely something that people want to consider. However, in the same breath, people will be like, well, even if I did land a bunch, I'm not sure if I have the crews to be able to support what I'm actually trying to do. But one of the things that clicked for me a while ago was the idea that, okay, one customer, if your average deal size is say 60K, that customer's worth 60K, maybe twice over say a 5-6 year time frame. A team member, especially a lead, is probably worth 600 grand a year in terms of what they can manage in terms of revenue. And so when I think about the math around what a customer's worth versus what a good team member is worth to a business, and it looks disproportionately more valuable for a good team member, but I don't see people's recruitment budgets like matching that. Like what do you see on the recruitment side?
Exactly that. I mean, it's like you and I, we're long lost brothers, because as you describe it, that's exactly what I see. It's a disproportionate, use of their dollars. And so if they can see, and this is the way I explain it to my clients that are having trouble on the personnel side. The spend is relative to the outcome, right? But really the spend needs to be directed where it needs to go. You need a company like Intrigue, and you need to have a relationship with a guy like Rob in order to direct that attention to the places it needs to go, and through your data and analytics, tell them what's been successful based on whatever their campaign is, right? So
Yeah, 100%.
in the same regard, now have the conversation back with me as a data guy from the numbers side. Rob, the very first thing I do when I take on a new client is talk about their prior business. How have they been doing business up to this point, and what got them here? And the first thing we do is we look at because everybody is so concerned about EBITDA score and that sort of thing, we look at their reoccurring maintenance, right? That's where the value is. That's where ultimately you're going to, that's where the name Equiscape comes from, equitable value in your landscape business, right?
Nice.
So we look at their churn rate or their turnover over the course of however many years of data I have. And for most of those companies, it's the first time they've ever even measured it. They have an idea.
Sure.
Yeah, they have an idea. But in order for us to be able to properly predict what the next year or two is going to look like, we have to know what that turnover rate is as it relates to their current book of business, so we know how much to sell in order to find gains, right? Guess what? Those companies definitely do not measure their personnel turnover rate. And what they're going to find if they start doing that, Rob, they'll find that the most companies are the same. The majority of the people that they lost, it was in the first 30 days or 60 days. So they need to really focus attention on the onboarding side and the initial training side and the courting stage needs to continue into the honeymoon stage to get them kind of out of that danger zone and that uncomfortable period of transition, right?
Yeah, well, it's
'Cause
learning, it's frustrating, it's difficult, it can be overwhelming.
they're humans. It's like taking an adult and plunging them into a new school district in middle school. I mean, think about that. You know, just because you cross the threshold of being an adult doesn't mean that you don't have the same types of insecurities around new people and new environments and things of that nature. So, having a good established transition set of people that are very deliberate about taking those people by the hand, so to speak, putting them with your best supervisor. You know, the biggest mistake in the personnel business I've ever seen, Rob, is when you take what you think is an all-star and you're like, we finally hit on one. We're going to move, we're going to transition them as fast as we can so they can run this route because it's really struggling. So what do? You put them on the route with your worst supervisor that ultimately you have tagged as somebody you're either going to transition away because that route's struggling, or they're going to demote, or and that sort of thing.
Find another
So
spot
what
in
do
the
you
bus,
do?
yeah.
Yeah, man. So what do? You take this great person and you put them on your worst team. So their first experience with your company is just not a good one. And so you explain it to them, and they understand the concept
Reasonably,
of what
they
you're,
get it,
but at the end of the day,
but they're emotionally drained, frustrated, being
that's
modeled
right.
the wrong way.
That's right. And no different than you said, commit to the percentage and carry out the marketing campaign. The same way needs to be treated as you recruit and transition associates that first couple of 3 months. Because if you can commit to that, you're going to get past those danger zones. And there's a series of them, the first 30 days, first 60 days, 90 days. Statistically, if you can get them past that 60 to 90-day mark, chances are they're going to stick around for a good while.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
if you don't do that, you're going to wind up hiring and rehiring that same individual's position maybe 3 or 4 times during that period. So which of those options makes the most sense? I mean, it's a pretty easy choice.
So so then when you're working with clients and in your experience over the last, many years, and you look at, leaders and entrepreneurs, owners of businesses, leadership teams that have successfully onboarded a bunch of folks and built great teams, is there one or two that come to mind that you could share, not necessarily your names, but just some like an anecdote about the mentality or the mindset of the leader in terms of like what makes them think and act in a way that onboards and treats people in a way that develops them and turns them into like where they believe they can have a career?
I'll be honest with you, and I have no problem mentioning names or companies because this individual is a very good friend of mine, and the company is a well-established national company that is not a client of mine, but I have no problem bragging on him. Steve Favor is a very high-level guy with Rupert down here in the Atlanta area. He and I have done the same job essentially and been on the same recruiting path for the majority of our careers. And there are few people as good as him in the business. And if you want to continue this conversation, you should do the next one with him.
I would love to.
Yeah, but Steve has done a fantastic job of establishing a good program that works over time. But I think at the end of the day, what you're going to find, what's different about Steve versus these other companies that try to replicate the same program and are less successful, Rob, he actually cares. He's as old or older than I am, and he's been doing it for the past 30 years at some capacity. The reason he's still involved, even, he probably has grown out of it professionally, is because he truly cares. He truly cares about the individual. He truly cares about them being comfortable in the transition phase and learning and growing and all of that sort of thing. So you just can't be disingenuous about it. You can't run it. You can't just be a coach that cracks open the playbook and says, hey, take this home and learn it. And then, everybody, let's get together on Friday and figure out how to win a ball game. You've got to be a coach that's actively involved, that truly cares, open door policy. Hey, anytime you need to come in, let's talk about life. How's mom and them? How are the kids doing? Talk to me about, what I can do outside of just the 9 to 5, which in our world is more like, 6 to 8.
Yeah.
But what can I do outside of that? Where do you need the most help? And truly care about everybody, and help them grow into fine young men and women. And that's truly where there's a transactional approach that doesn't work. That's where you go into the transformational approach. So a transformational approach is probably the short answer to the long-winded answer that
No,
I
it's
gave.
beautiful. And it's really interesting you say that too, because like after doing like 100 of these interviews and interviewing from like a sales perspective, like probably 1,000 plus, leaders and entrepreneurs in the green industry, it's there's like this pattern that's emerged, and I don't think it's unique to landscape. I think it's really just businesses. But there's like this, initial, I'm going to start this thing. Oftentimes there's a chip on the shoulder. And so it's like, I got to go create my own thing. I got to find a way to make a space for me. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. And then like, okay, I'm getting busy. I need some help. I'm going to bring in some people. I don't know how to recruit, but I need some friends or some people. I'm going to use some job postings and whatever. And then there's this mentality of like, well, if I want to do it right, I got to do it myself. And so you've got some people and some turnover. And there's like, oh, I got one, maybe a unicorn that's now working with me, and we're gelling and we're starting to grow. And then it's like maybe one step back, 2 steps forward. It's frustrating. Some people are doing some weird things. As a leader now, I got to like create more clarity so that people understand how to win. I get to like 2, 3, 5 million. And then at some point I found that there's this like there's very few companies at 10 million that don't have or bigger, that don't have a mindset of service. Like this leadership mindset that switches into, I'm here to serve all so that they can all serve well. And I was just curious, like, have you seen people make those transitions? And is there a tip or two that you can give people if they're in one of those spots and feel like they want to go to the next spot?
Man, again, it's divine intervention, because what you just said gave me chills, because I'm actively watching it happen every day.
Mm.
My clients, as we have more dialogue, as we dig deeper in and start peeling back the layers, it's not just about the business, it's about the mindset. So we can talk about numbers, and we can really do a deep dive there. But Rob, really where it leads to is why is that happening? Why are we here? Where does that come back to, Rob? It comes back to people, processes, and vision, right? So where does it start and end? With that entrepreneur's mindset. And so to your point, they have to make a shift away from the transactional side to the transformational side. They need to, so many entrepreneurs, you hit on a point a second ago, and I don't even know if you knew exactly how profound it was. I think there was a time, especially in my generation, that was raised highly competitive. And you were taught that the only way to win is to beat out everybody else around you, right?
Yeah.
Win the game.
Get on the top of the podium.
That's it. And so, and you know what? In a lot of ways, that was healthy, because it gave you drive, and it made you competitive. But I tell you, as I got older and wiser, and I think you would agree, you start to learn that it's really not about beating out the guy around you. That as the whole sum, we all are more successful if we work together, if we pool our resources, if we lean on one another, even in the same sandbox, in the same market, to break bread together, every once in a while, and talk about our challenges. And you're going to find in the landscape business, there is an abundance and probably limitless amount of opportunity out there, that there's enough market share for everybody. And so that this stigma of I've got to beat out the guy next to him, I'm not going to talk to him about how we can pool resources and find our way to the next level is ridiculous. Because what you're going to find, to answer your point, the most successful ones have figured out how to shed that chip on their shoulder is what you said.
Mm.
And now they can relax and stop trying to beat everybody and start looking around and going, you know what, this is a lot more fun when we all work together and we all, sit in the same room, and we can change pricing strategies confidently together.
And you can buy stuff together and double the amount you buy and get better pricing and increase your margin.
Amen. Amen. And I'm not going to name drop this one. I did hear it. I don't know the person personally. I don't know that they want me to requote it just yet. It's fresh. But the saying was that the landscape industry has to figure out too, on this personnel thing, how to pay their people more money. So one of we're not super attractive to some people because it's dirty, it's hot, and that sort of thing. But we have got to figure out a way as an entire market to pay people better than just slightly, better than living wages. If you want to attract preeminent talent, there is a side to it where you and I can only be so charming and so transformational to where these people understand that they have to make enough money to buy a house, to have cars, to get kids to practice and get married and those types of things. And unfortunately, sometimes as our market ebbs and flows, field personnel are not living at that level. And so we have to figure out a way as an industry to get together and further empower not the middle management piece, but we need to further educate and empower the guys that are the boots on the ground. We've got to find a way to get them more money, and that means we have to charge the client more or eliminate middle management to a certain extent. And I know that scares people, but at the same time, the people that are really making the money, the boots on the ground, if you're having a tough time keeping those guys around, you have a multitude of problems, and one of them is you probably aren't paying them enough money, which is crazy coming out of a financial guy's mouth, but it is reality.
Well, it's also where the business comes to life. That's where the customer service, that's where the customer interaction happens. So I think there's a lot to that. I think that's actually another episode we could do on its entirely on its own. However,
I think so too.
There was a couple more I want to get to. I know we're kind of running out of time, but one of the things I've seen a lot, and we always talk about this idea of like budding a bear trap. And so like this idea that people are innately nice and likable folks. And just like a bunny in a forest, it's soft and cuddly and couldn't harm a thing. But then if you put a bear trap around its foot and you try to like help it, it will actually it'll freak out. It'll try to bite you. It might even try to gnaw its foot or rip it out of the bear trap to try to get away from you because it's just so freaked out because it's feeling so much pain. And so sometimes we'll see entrepreneurs acting kind of like that in a weird way, because you're just like, wow, the business looks good, your team's awesome, like what is making you maybe not be the nicest in the way that you're approaching humans around you. And what I've learned over the years is that a lot of times entrepreneurs maybe overextend themselves financially with the business. They're taking more out than maybe they should, quote unquote. Can you speak a little bit to like owners pay versus role pay versus size of business? How much should I be making as an owner regardless of my role? Should I separate the two? Like, how does that work out? We talk about a lot of people ask this kind of question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And every client that I have does it a totally different way. Some people pay themselves religiously every single week with the rest of their payroll. Some people actually do that, but they cut themselves live checks so that they don't have to cash them immediately if cash flow's tight. So they won't do direct deposit. They'll have live checks, and the reason I know that is as I'm doing the numbers, I'm like, man, something's funky with salary, and he's like, well, that's because I just went and cashed 3 months worth of paychecks, and it's like, okay, well that makes more sense, right? So you have some people that approach it that way. You have some people that just do periodic owner contribution draws and things of that nature. But I will say the most successful companies that I've seen out there, Rob, pay themselves what you would think, or probably not what you would think. You have a pretty good idea what they pay themselves. What the general public might think is much less than they really should be. And then at the end of the year, they figure out a way to benefit on a tax basis and that sort of thing. But the best ones I've seen, they live within their means, and they pay themselves as well as probably their highest paid associate. And to be honest with you, and then what they do is they take the rest of their money and set it to work for themselves. Investments and retirement and different places. Obviously, they want to step on the bottom line. They want to take that money and move it to places that it's gonna work for them. But yeah, that country club mentality. I don't have any current clients that have that approach. I do know those people, and I know who that if you want to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, that pay themselves an extraordinary amount of money, that have country club memberships that they won't miss a payment on, but they'll bounce a check.
Right.
And so there are definitely those extremes out there. But the most successful companies that I've seen, they're living in that transformational world. They're immersed and attached to their people, and the heartbeat of the company starts and ends with them, as we were saying. They kind of live in accordance to how the company behaves, how the people are behaving. So as the people go, they go.
Yeah, it's cool. I just find those folks are happy.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so then in terms of net income and retained earnings as a percentage of budget, and it might be different as businesses get bigger, but I'd say a $5 million landscape business is probably the largest group of what I would consider entrepreneurs. So the largest segment in the landscape industry is under 500,000. The next segment's between 500 and a million. As you go up, it gets more rare air. But if you're running a $5 million shop, what would be a good net income, assuming you're paying yourself market rate for your role, and what should people think about when it comes to retained earnings?
Yeah. So as it relates to net income, you're referring to their net profit as a company.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So just want to make sure people understand you're not talking about what they're personally paying themselves.
Fair enough.
As it relates to their net profit, typically once you reach that 10% mark, if you're in reoccurring maintenance, you've kind of reached a really nice spot. It's really tough to reach that level when it comes to staying competitive in the market and that sort of thing. You start adding in design build and things of that nature, just so that your listeners can kind of comprehend what we're talking about here. Let's take a reoccurring maintenance business and say 10% is a really good number. Let's set it to the side. And then now let's talk about a design build firm. I personally manage a couple of design build firms that live in the 25 to 30% net margin range, which is, man, it's really strong. And I watch the way they do it. To your point, they kind of overextend themselves a lot of times. And those are the companies that actually pay themselves very modest amounts of money and that sort of thing, because they want to reinvest in their people. They're pushing those dollars around. So that's not to say that at the end of the year that when they file their taxes, it's
Right.
30% margin,
No.
right? But realistically, throughout the course of the year, they can turn those. Well, if you were to kind of marry those two together, right,
Yeah.
depending proportionally of which portion of that is design build versus reoccurring maintenance, let's say it's 50-50, then, do the math and you wind up, bullseye type money of a well diversified company. You're somewhere between that 15 to 20%, margin, and that's really strong for the green industry.
And if you're listening to this and you want to maybe learn about how to get to those numbers, how would someone reach out to David Whittaker?
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're even giving me that opportunity, because as you know me, I'm not here for that purpose, but I definitely would love to talk to some of your audience. And the best way to get a hold of me, I have to make sure I read my number directly from the piece of paper, because my wife says that I use the wrong area code numerous times. But my direct number, and this is the thing, Rob, that's different about me versus the full service firms that have bookkeepers and training coach, life coaches and all this stuff. I'm me. I'm the guy you actually talk to. I'm the one that you can call on a cell phone like an attorney on retainer, as I call it. And I pick up, I reply, and this is exactly what our monthly meetings look like, and sometimes in between. So I strongly encourage anybody out there. I give a full hour of my time to do the initial discovery call, to just talk like you and I are.
Yeah.
Talk about their business, what their challenges are, what are some of the roadblocks, what are their aspirations, and you'd be amazed at what we can get accomplished in an hour's time. We just did it in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty awesome.
I encourage anybody, if they want to call me directly or text me, if they're younger generation and they don't feel comfortable talking on the phone, they want to text, they can do that too. The number is 770-685-4700. And in order to get a hold of me, I encourage everybody to go to my website. That'll really give them a good idea of what the product offering is. I offer flexible fee scheduling based on, you said it, 500,000 to $1 million to $3 million to 5. So I offer a package to basically any size company out there based on their revenue stream. And I try my best to accommodate them to make it not only affordable and practical, but to make sure that they pay for me within the first quarter. So the markup values that we make adjustments to, the slightest little tweaks, I make sure that they get an immediate return on their investment. I mean, that's the business I'm in. So the proof's in the pudding. So please go to my website, www.equiscape.co. There's no M on the end. I'm in the financial business. I wasn't willing to buy that M for the extra $1,000 that it would have cost. So that's why it reads that way. And then obviously you can just email me directly. It's D Whittaker, D, and then Whittaker, Whittaker at equiscape.co. But start at the website, go from there. I'd love to schedule a call with anybody in your listening audience and spend some time, sharing with those guys for an hour or so, doing a discovery call. And, hopefully from there we can establish a relationship and a partnership and move on from there.
Awesome, man. Appreciate that. Two quick ones before you go. One, inspiration, author, speaker, who would you say that someone should check out?
Actually, let's see. I made some notes here because I love referring to people. Author-wise, I didn't actually write this one down because you're asking from an inspirational standpoint. I'm a big time Christian, as you know. I have a podcast. It's called Equiscape Insider Grass to Gratitude, where I involve that aspect. Any Christian leader, I strongly encourage people to kind of lean on. I'm old school, so Billy Graham is a big influence that I trust. Had the right the right meaning behind what they were doing and motivation. Current day, as far as learning things, I've noticed in our industry, Rob, that most people have a very short attention span. And so, I believe his name is Gordon. It's the Energy Bus, that series of books. I'm going to have to look up his name real quick for you.
John Gordon?
But I believe John Gordon. It is Gordon. So the Energy Bus, those series of books are such easy reads and simple but profound messages, to where if you order a series, and I highly recommend this because they're very quick reads, order an entire series of books that John Gordon recommends and read them in the order he recommends, because each one of them kind of stacks one on top of the other.
Awesome.
And that's a really good one and really simple. If you really want to get more complex and less motivating, I did write one down because I thought you might ask, is the book Traction is a really tough one to navigate through.
Well, it's a manual.
It's a manual. So I recommend that to really any level of entrepreneur. But I will say, and you can attest, it's a tough read, for a beginner if you don't read a lot. But to your point, if you treat it like a manual, take notes, try not to read it all in one sitting. Use it as a reference point to your point. And then, there are a lot of stuff out there. Vern Harnish, I wrote down, scaling up. You're nodding like that's he does a good job of doing some short blurbs out there for your younger audience that has a short attention span. But I highly recommend reading books because it forces you into a place where you're not just using that time to read a book. You're really it's an introspective moment. So try to you can watch your short videos for a lot of your days and that sort of thing for entertainment value. But when it comes to educational value, read books. Sit down, give yourself that quiet time, and it's therapeutic and educational all the same.
Your brain absorbs it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a cool complement to Traction is a book called What the Heck is EOS? We use it for our team when we onboard to help them understand like what we're doing as a system. Anyway, man, you're the best, David. Thank you so much for doing this. We're out of time. We got to do another one. And so I just really appreciate you doing it. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. If you're listening to this and you're under $1 million in revenue, we have a roadmap just for you. It's all about going from 0 to $1 million as a landscape business. It's called the $1 million Landscape Growth Strategy Roadmap. You can get it for free, absolutely no strings attached at intriguemedia.com/roadmap. We work with hundreds of landscapers, we've interviewed thousands, and we've compiled all the foundational skills required, tactics and strategies to go from 0 to $1 million. It's broken down into 5 simple principles that we've compiled from all the people that are the best in the industry, as well as sharing, stories from our own journey getting to $1 million at Intrigue. And so if you're interested and you want to check it out, intriguemedia.com/roadmap, and then you'll get the 0 to $1 million landscape growth strategy that'll help get you over $1 million. At the end of the day, getting to $1 million is kind of on your shoulders as an entrepreneur. We work with some people under $1 million, but for the most part, our clients are over $1 million in revenue. So we're trying to do whatever we can to help people get there. And then once you get there, if you're looking for some more help, we want to get to 5 or 10, then that's kind of where we come in. We can generate you a bunch of awesome leads. But until then, if you're trying to get over that $1 million hump, check out intriguemedia.com/roadmap. You can grab it, download it right now. It's completely free. Hope it helps.